Welcome to this week's xConnect, connecting you to the experts. I'm your host, Greg Mills. Today we're joined by the Associate Director of the Center for Civic Engagement at Washington State University, Ben Calabretta, to discuss Cougs Vote and the impact WSU students and young people across the country could have on upcoming elections. Before we get going, a reminder that you at home can chime in with your questions. Just connect with us on Twitter, Facebook, even right here on our live stream. Ben, thanks for joining us today. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.
Let's talk about Cougs Vote. Really frame for us sort of what it is.
Well, Cougs Vote is a campaign pretty much being headed up by our office, the Center for Civic Engagement. It's a system-wide campaign trying to get all Washington State University students interested in the political landscape, be informed about our democratic process, and actually just like participate more in the democratic process. So most of the events and most of the campaign takes place in Pullman, but we have partners all over all of the different campuses, as well as a couple of extension offices across the state.
How does that fit in with the rest of what your office handles?
Well, you know, our office is about civic engagement, and a big part of that is just being involved in your community and knowing about your community and really working to improve it. Obviously, political participation and knowing how the process works is a big part of civic engagement. It's a big part of knowing what needs to be done and maybe how to address issues, because those are the ways, that's what we have in place essentially to make sure that that happens.
Yeah. We're at a spot in our history where we have a presidential vote coming up that a lot of people in both parties are saying it's very, very important what happens with the young vote. Why is it so important for young people to vote and to understand what they're voting about?
Well, typically that age group, so like an 18 to 24 age group, votes at the lowest percentage rates compared to like other age groups. The problem there is that policy and laws that are being developed are going to be affecting them more for the rest of their lives. So that's why it's even more important that they not only know what's going on, but be a part of that decision-making process. And so
they're ready to make a vote, but over time and throughout history, that age group hasn't voted very much over the years, right? I mean, it's not that different now than it was 20 years ago, 50 years ago?
Right. Well, I don't have the exact numbers, but
Sure.
I can tell you that, you know, typically citizens vote at about a 60% rate.
Okay.
In 2012, which is the last presidential election, WSU students voted at a 52% rate. So
That's high, isn't it?
It's definitely high compared to other institutions.
Okay.
So essentially the national average across the country is about 47%. So WSU students are voting at about a 5% higher rate than other university students across the country. But still, that's only 52%. And if, you know, we could bump up that percentage, you know, every 5% is another 1,500 students, another 1,500 votes potentially. So that shows you just how much is being left on the table.
What kind of an impact have those students had in previous elections?
Well, it's a little hard to know exactly how maybe they impacted an election or not, but just one example of something that happened somewhat recently was in 2004 when Christine Gregoire, who was the Democratic candidate for governor in Washington, she actually won the election by 129 votes. So there was several recounts. There were, you know, it was contentious, obviously, but that goes to show you that like 129 votes, that's nothing. Essentially, if somebody stays at home and says my vote doesn't count, it's actually not true. It can count, and it should count. So.
Yeah, I think it's easy for us, no matter what demographic we're in, to oftentimes feel that our vote doesn't count just living this far west. Mm-hmm. We run into that battling with the leak of information and confirmation that a candidate has won. When you're talking about national elections, but you're talking about more regional and local elections, mm-hmm. and students can have a huge effect on the area that at least they live in currently.
Right, and I think as far as, you know, local impacts, I think one of the challenges we face, or probably all college students face, is that they might be registered to vote, but they're registered, you know, wherever their hometown is, like in Bellingham or wherever it is, not Pullman. Right. So one of the educational pieces that we have is just not just trying to help get students registered to vote, but to make sure that their registration is up to date. So if they, if they have something in place to be able to vote in their hometown, that's great. But if they can update their registration to have it reflect their current residential address, in Washington it's a mail-in ballot, so those ballots will get sent directly to them. So it makes it that much easier. And actually the mail-in part, that might be one of the reasons why Washington State students vote at a higher rate than students around the country, just because that mail-in ballot's a little easier to make it possible to vote.
Yeah.
So if it wasn't an option, they would have to travel back to their hometown to vote or try to register for an absentee ballot. So it essentially takes out a couple of those hurdles that students face.
Yeah, and do you find in your conversations with these students that that they understand, one, that they have some power when you speak with them, and secondly that they actually are able to vote because of the mail-in thing?
Yes, actually just today, like we had a voter registration table in the Compton Union building, and I just had a couple students go by, and I could hear them talking as they looked at the table, and they're going by. It's like, oh, I really need to register to vote, or I should probably register to vote. And so, like, I hear that, and I'm like, hey, come on over here. You can do it right now. So I think they understand the importance of it. I think it's just one of those things that if they don't do it right away, it tends to get bumped down your list of like things I need to do, and then all of a sudden it's election day, and like, oh, I forgot to register, or I didn't update my registration, so I didn't get my ballot, and it's too late now. So really we're trying to get, we were working to get students registered to vote back in the spring, just trying to get some momentum going.
So when does time run out for them?
So students can register online. If we're just talking about the state of Washington,
yeah.
Obviously every state is different,
yeah.
But students can register online for Washington until October 10th is the last day, so that's just next week. They can register in person or with a paper form by October 31st, I want to say is the deadline there. So we have paper forms. We also, when we're doing our voter registration efforts, we do have a laptop people can register online if they need to, or they can even do it over the phone, on their phone if they want.
Yeah.
But we also have paper forms and get those registration forms turned in.
So we vote, students vote at a higher rate than other institutions. What would you like to realistically see that rate to be? It's easy to say 100, I suppose.
Yeah.
We'd all like to say that about the country, but realistically.
So just a little context. In April, I conducted a survey of students at WSU, and we had about 500 responses. So it was a decent number of responses for this survey, and it was all about civic engagement. But one of the questions was, we had two questions related to voting, and it was, are you registered to vote, and do you plan on voting? And over 80% of the students said that they plan on voting. So I kind of want to know is like, why potentially is there a drop-off? If 81% say they want or they plan on voting,
yeah.
but then only 52% actually do, so what happens there? I think it'd be great to get to 80%. I think realistically, I would love to have it more around 65 or 70%. That still might not be realistic, but I think we're putting a lot of effort into trying to make that happen. So
yeah, in 2008 and 2012, as far as national voting goes, younger people and a younger vote had quite a bit of power in those votes, right. and a different way of communicating that has come out and become more a part of the voting process for young people. What kind of power can millennials have and the younger voting group have in this upcoming election, which has its own personality?
Well, it's definitely led to a lot of interest in this election on either side, which is good. I think, as millennials, you're essentially talking about a whole generation of people, and they communicate differently, they raise awareness differently, they mobilize differently. So I think like through social media and through different efforts like that, like that's essentially how you reach people these days. It's not necessarily on like the evening news. It's more on Facebook, or Twitter's a big one. So those are the ways that people communicate with each other and really learn more about the issues, I think.
You think so?
You see some things on Facebook and you're not sure,
Right. All right. So the word is that Cougs voters have watch parties.
We do. Yes.
Let's talk about that.
So there's 4 debates. There's 3 presidential debates and then a vice presidential debate. And we have an agreement worked out with the Compton Union building. They have a big screen in the layer there, like in the big student gathering area. And we'll have all of those debates on the big screen, and We'll be giving out T-shirts and just kind of making it a fun atmosphere, and hopefully just not just having students sit there watching the debate, but talking with their friends and actually participating on Twitter with the hashtag Cougs Vote 16. So it's more like we want to get the message out there that like this is important. You should be watching this. You should be learning as much as you can about it, but also discussing it with their friends. The first one was last week, and it was the presidential debate, and it was entertaining. Going into it, I was a little concerned that there might be some kind of arguments or yelling or something, but it went really well. Students acted very civil. It's essentially what we wanted it to be. So the next one that we have is on tomorrow night, and it's the vice presidential debate. And so we'll see how it goes. We also have we're working with ASWSU, our Associated Students of Washington State University, to hold 2 student debates. So these will be debates between the college Republicans and the Young Democrats, which are 2 student groups, and they'll be able to debate their party platforms on different topics. So the first one will be on October 12th at 5 p.m. and that'll focus mostly on economic policy, and then the second one will be on October 20th at 7 p.m. and that will focus more on human rights or social issues.
Do you feel like you gain momentum as students come and experience this? You're going to have your group that's really interested in politics, and they're going to be there.
Right.
But it's all the other ones that you're probably trying to reach and that are more difficult to reach. Do you find you gain momentum as you go, or you hope to, I suppose?
I hope to. I was a part of our campaign in 2012, and it definitely seemed like it got more intense as the election date came, which I think probably will happen again. But that's the reason why we have watch parties, we have the student debates, we have voter registration tables, trying to hit all of these different ways to get the message in front of students, get the Cougs Vote message. Like it's not like a question, it's not like Cougs Vote, it's actually like Cougs Vote, this is what you're supposed to be doing. And we've had a lot of help working with like student organizations and different departments on campus, and like I said, the different campuses around the state. So it's not just our office. We're essentially just helping promote it all, and we come up with the Cougs Vote thing. But it's an effort led by, I would say, literally dozens of different groups around the state. So.
What do you specifically have to do to help kids who are from out of state, just about awareness and how to handle their voting abilities?
Yeah, that's a good question. We get a lot of, I would say about 90% of the students, maybe even a little higher than that, 90% of the students are Washington residents. So that's kind of what we know the most about.
Sure.
But for our own efforts, we had to essentially prioritize like what knowledge we were going to be able to know, first of all, and like share with everyone, because every state has different regulations and rules about voting and registration. So we decided we were going to focus on Washington, and then the next 4 states that had the highest students from that state. So that includes Oregon, California, Hawaii, and Idaho. So really it's about having the necessary forms, those kind of things, and just being able to answer those questions. We do have our website, the Cougs Vote website. We have all of the resources possible. It's just not things that I can quote because somebody's from Rhode Island. I don't know the rules, but we do have a way for them to find out.
Right, but it's a way for them to get
exactly
there. And is it pretty easy to get them engaged once you can just get in front of them?
Right. I think we had a student who was from Alaska today who was asking, he's like, yeah, but I'm from Alaska, so I'm not going to be able to vote. And we're like, well, actually, I was able to pull out the phone right then, and she's like, so you just need to request this absentee ballot from Alaska, and they're like, oh, okay. So really, it's just they think there's some big barriers to it, but it's more about providing the information they need. So
fantastic. Well, good for you, getting the Cougs voting, and you've already got good numbers, so you get to go up from a nice number. That's great.
Yeah, we hope to have a good turnout.
Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you for having us.
Thanks, Ben. Thank you at home for helping us out as well. Hope you enjoyed today's show. Remember, you can stay connected with us all week by tweeting us, linking us with Facebook. Also, add us to that circle on Google+, or email us at kwsutv@wsu.edu. Send us your show ideas, too, and thanks for watching. We'll see you next week on air and online.